Hello and welcome to Wines of the World. My name is Anthony Metzger. I'm a winemaker and certified sommelier. Here at Wines of the World, I interview winemakers from all over the planet. I conduct my interviews via Skype and record them live so that I can bring you face to face with winemakers from all over the world. So without further ado, please enjoy the show. Sam, welcome to the show, Wines of the World. Thanks for being with us.
What's going on?
So you're a winemaker from Washington State, but you're currently working as a winemaker in Minnesota. And what's Minnesota winemaking like? Because, we don't hear too much about Minnesota. It gets to the negative 30s in the winter. So what is it like making wine in Minnesota?
We're pioneering out here, which is fun. It can be fun being the guy first to do something, first to try something. But
Sure.
At the same time, it's a little bit more chemistry, a little bit more
Exploring.
figuring it out for yourself as you go along.
Well, I like that word pioneering you use because, even thousands of years ago or however long ago, even at one point France was a new winemaking country and regions, and they didn't know, and they had to experiment too. So it's almost like this is the beginning of Minnesota.
Yeah, and if you look back in United States winemaking history, New York, back in the 1800s was the largest wine producer in the United States,
Sure.
in upstate New York. California didn't come in the scene until the 60s, 70s as a real big player.
Yeah.
Washington came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That was late 70s that they finally figured out they could grow, Cab Merlot and French Vinifera in Columbia Valley. And, where I'm from in Washington State, that was, pioneering back then in the 70s and 80s for those wineries out there. So kind of just keeping up with that pioneering trend, you know what I mean? And next generation of it all. But yeah.
Very cool. So with all your travels that you've done, is there like another story that, I don't know, in like France or Australia you're talking about too? I mean, something that sticks out to you from your travels when you're out making wine abroad or importing wine or anything like that?
I'm not the type of winemaker who comes in and says, you need to do it like this.
Sure.
I'm more of the winemaker that comes in and says, you're doing this great. I want to do like this, only let's put a little twist on it to make it my own.
Sure.
So whether that's, bringing some California barrels out to France, which we had done. We brought some American oak out there, and we had aged some wine in American oak. We had experimented with some different type of yeast and stuff like that
Sure.
with the facilities that we were working with on importation. Just, I don't know, like it's wine. You have a common bond with other winemakers and other people in the wine industry, even if you don't share the same languages or cultures.
Yeah.
You're still a winemaker and you're both doing the same stuff. So that really sticks out in my mind, just meeting the people, from wherever I visited, just having that common bond with other winemakers and being able to, bypass language and cultural barriers and stuff like that and be able to talk shop and,
Have a glass of wine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Sweet. So another thing I do here on the show is I do scenario questions. So I ask winemakers, what kind of wine would you drink in a certain scenario?
Okay.
And one scenario I want to know what wine you would drink in is, say you're at like a pub, a bar. It's the Sunday night football game, NFL, and your team's playing against your number one rival. You're with your buddies. You just ordered a hamburger, double cheddar cheeseburger with bacon and a side of onion rings. Normally what you would do is you'd order the biggest, tallest glass of beer you could find. But if you had to drink wine with that meal in that setting, what wine would you drink?
They're out of beer at the bar and the
Yeah.
Seahawks are playing and I got a burger in front of me.
Yeah.
I'd probably go for some Washington State Limburger. They grow Limburger in Washington State. Little known tidbit. They don't grow a lot of it, but there's some really good Limburger out there.
Okay.
That's usually burgers and stuff like that. My wine of choice, if I could.
And so Lindberger, that's the name of the grape?
Yeah, that's the name of the grape. It's the varietal.
And
It's
why
a
do you
Ger-
drink? Huh?
It was German, and they brought it over to
Oh, really?
Washington State. They don't grow a lot of it, but
Okay.
there are some guys making Limburger wine. We did, probably like 5-6 barrels a year of Limburger out at Preston when I did my apprenticeship. So
Nice. And why would you drink that wine with a big juicy burger?
it just has this like it's really earthy. It goes really good with lamb too. Limburger and lamb goes very well.
Okay.
It just has this very earthy flavors and aromas.
Yeah.
And usually with red meat and stuff like that, you'd want to go with a big bold cab. But
Yeah.
I like to go the other way with it. You know what I mean? I like more earthy flavors.
Okay.
Take a sip of Limburgers, take a bite of your burger. Let all the
Nice.
flavors mix up together. I don't know. I find like cabs and stuff like that can really overpower meat sometimes, especially
Sure.
California cabs and
Yeah.
all the big bold stuff. So I usually tend to go a little bit more mellower.
Okay. So a Lindbergher Red from Washington with your burger.
Yep.
All right. So another scenario, say it's the middle of February in Minnesota where you are now, where it's dark and cold and not much going on. You just finished a long week of work. You get home Friday night, and you're gonna make yourself some spaghetti and meatballs for dinner, and just sit on the couch and watch TV the rest of the night. What kind of wine would you drink with your spaghetti and meatballs in February after a long work week?
Spaghetti meatballs. They have to go Italian.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Montepulciano actually and Sangiovese's.
Sure.
Montepulciano is kind of it's cheap, you know what I mean. And when I was over in Italy, you could find that stuff in the little markets and stuff. You know what I mean?
Cool.
They'd fill up whatever jug you had for like $2.
Oh wow.
It's
Awesome.
usually really good wine too. You know what I mean? So I'd go with Montepulciano or a Sangiovese. I'm a big fan of Sangiovese.
Okay.
Something like that. A little bit of spice to it. So
Perfect. Very cool. All right. And then I usually end with this one question, and that is, if you could drink a bottle of wine with anybody in the world or anybody from history, you could sit down and just drink a bottle of wine with them. Who would you drink a bottle of wine with?
that's a good question, man. I don't know. I'd probably go for Jesus. You know what I mean? He was the
Jesus?
pioneer of wine. I really
Yeah.
think so. I think I'd have him fill up my water glass and turn it into some wine, and then talk about philosophy and life and stuff like that. You know? What I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, that was my second question to follow up. That was, what wine would you drink with them? And I'm sure you're gonna say a miracle wine, huh?
Yeah, it'd be dealer's choice. Whatever
Yeah.
whatever he turned the water into.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, who would your second choice be?
E40. I go to the East Bay, California. I'd find E40 and I'd try his mango scotto, and I'd have a big glass of mango scotto with E40.
Nice.
And he could tell me about the rap game and the wine industry and the rap game, how that all ties in together.
Sure.
And stuff.
Yeah, he's a winemaker now. He's making the mango scotto.
I worked with him a little bit.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
You worked with E40 on helping make his wine?
Yeah, he did mango scotto and then Mr. Earl Charles collection.
Oh, sure.
I did some blends for him, and then from my blends, he went to another facility and then came up with the mango scotto concept. So it was
nice.
kind of interesting. Yeah, and that's I don't know. I've always been the crazy guy who I'm not a wine snob. I didn't
Sure.
dream of becoming a winemaker growing up. I fell into the industry,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy the industry. But originally, it wasn't my original passion. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I never dreamt when I was in high school or college or any time that I'm going to be a winemaker. Traveling the world doing this. So.
Yeah.
My whole approach to winemaking is a lot different than some of the other guys who have a really deep rooted passion from an early age to do this and I'm a beer drinker. I don't even drink wine most of the time. I drink cheap beer like Keystone Light half the time. And,
Yeah.
so I don't mind making sweet wine. I know some guys will roll their eyes and go, oh, I'm making this Kool-Aid wine, but
Yeah.
it helps people get started on wine, and everybody starts sweet. Nobody goes and buys a $100 bottle of Cab for their first bottle of wine.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not a wine snob.
Yeah.
If it gets you drunk and I did my job, basically how I look. My approach to winemaking is if I can win some awards and if I can get other people to say, yeah, that's really good, then I think I did a little bit better.
All right. Well, I think we touched on all the bases. Is there any last minute things or last stories or anything, or did we cover it all?
I don't know. I mean, like as a winemaker, I always wonder, how many people have I gotten drunk in my life? Off of drinking, my product, how many babies have been made because of me? How many bad decisions? How many people have had to do the walk of shame home because they drank a bottle of Sam Jennings made wine? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just some of the things I always like kind of keep in the back of my mind as a winemaker, because
Yeah.
I mean we're creating booze, and booze livens up the party, you know what I mean, and everybody drinks wine to do one thing usually, you know. So I don't know, that's always something interesting that I always kind of think about as a winemaker is, you know, like I wish there was a way I could keep that tally mark, you know what I mean,
Oh, gosh,
and have it on a wall somewhere.
Put on the back of your bottle. Call this number if you have a funny story the next morning.
That's a good idea. Yeah, if you're having a good time, you know,
Yeah.
call this number and tell me about your drunken adventures off my wines.
Hey, that's a pretty good idea. You might get a lot of calls, but hey. All right, for sure. Well, Sam, thanks for being on the show today. Appreciate your time on Wines of the World.
Yeah, thank you, bud. Good talking to you, and yeah, keep drinking.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
See you later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Wines of the World. Make sure you check in next week as I will be interviewing another winemaker. If you have any questions that you would like me to ask a winemaker during any of my interviews, just reach out to me through my social media accounts, which you can find on my website, winesoftheworld.info. Be sure to check my website tomorrow and every single day of this week, as I will be releasing some really fun, interesting wine stories. Thank you, and please be sure to subscribe.